How's it going? Welcome back. It's Jonathan. Okay, so I am recording this from my mobile phone. So I apologize for the strange dimension ratio that's going to be shown on YouTube for this video. Currently in Macau, still don't have my laptop, unfortunately. I'll be heading back to Vietnam and hopefully get my laptop in about 2 weeks. So this video is going to be on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin cycle. Now, I've actually stopped putting videos out regarding the Bitcoin cycle for one main reason, and that was primarily going into what happened around the start of the year, where I said that this was the last 90-day Bitcoin cycle. And that's not going into the fact that there is no more 90-day Bitcoin cycles, but it was really when I stopped really following Bitcoin from I guess like an alternative perspective, because now it's mainstream. All the ETFs are coming out. It's really lost its touch. Everyone's talking about it still as if it's an alternative currency, as if it's some sort of alternative thing. However, it's in the mainstream view now, with especially all these ETFs and all that sort of stuff. So I thought that I would just go through and show you one of the cycles, or I guess one of the McWhirter cycles that I provide our readers in the monthly Gann forecasting section. It's a service that we have. It's pretty cheap. You can trial it for about $30, and then ongoing subscription is $50. I just put out a forecast each month, and if you're looking up or down, this is really a way that you can, I guess, sort of get some foresight so that you can understand what may happen in the month ahead. And one of the things that I put out, whilst the curve for the year is pointing up for Bitcoin, and I'm still publishing that, saying like this is the curve, and I'm also saying that seeing a lot of people publish the exact same curves now, because everyone likes to, I guess, one way or another. I'm typically at the forefront of all this because I've been doing forecasting for about 10 years. So I like to see when people progress. But now they all just start putting out the same stuff I was putting out. And once people start to do what I do, it generally stops working, because then it becomes mainstream, and then cycles can change. And everyone went mainstream with all these Bitcoin cycles. Everyone started to figure them out. A lot of my cycles, I guess, are not as powerful anymore. So that's why I went looking for something else, and we went down the McWhirter rabbit hole. We did a full course on McWhirter, and this is basically another cycle based on her theory. Now, I'm using Alfie's Trade software version 3 at the moment, and for those of you who have this software, I'm going to show you how to do this yourself. And those who don't have the software, you're just going to benefit right now from the output of the software. I have been publishing these monthly in the back end. However, I'm going to give you maybe the next 3 months of suggested curve for the Bitcoin market, and just walk you through what's likely to occur. Now, when I started researching McWhirter, obviously I came to McWhirter from the 18.6 year cycle, maybe like 8 years ago. I was introduced to McWhirter through some of the Gann forecasting guys, and we studied McWhirter for the 18-year cycle, because she was one of the pioneers who studied it, and everyone else sort of figured it out around that. The 18-year lunar cycle, or the 18.6 year business cycle, as McWhirter would call it, the business cycle. And then through her book and through her studies, she gave us methods on how we can forecast individual stocks or commodities and things like that. And at first, I didn't really have a good grip on it in the program. You'll see early on in the program where we're trying to work out her method. It was quite difficult, but then towards later in the program, and I'm also going to be doing a refresh with a few extra models coming out soon. I'm going to be going through basically everything that I've learned since I've built that program, just so that you guys can get from basically the start to the end, just as we did for our 2024 forecast. Basically, we're building it from the start, and we're pushing the whole thing out. So so you probably missed a step here. Basically, we've just opened up the download price history tab, and then we've moved down to this section down here where it says more, because we're downloading more. I'm just going to move this back up. Again, using a VPS, unfortunately, so I can get Windows on my phone. And we're just clicking on the Bitcoin market right here, Bitcoin BTC USD. And we're going to click on choose library, or choose symbol, sorry. And it's just going to put it in there. So you can either just put that symbol right in there, or you can go to the symbols library. Now we're going to click download. Press OK. And this is going to bring in basically all the data, and we've got the date down here, all the data since 2014. Okay, and it goes up to 2024. All right, we're going to calculate now the ephemeris for it. Now here's the key thing. So the Alfie software has a few sections that we need to customize before we can actually use the McWhirter chart, okay? Now, again, if you've been provided the McWhirter software that I built in the Google Sheet panel, in the McWhirter forecasting course, you can still use that. However, if you have been using the trade software version 3, we actually have this McWhirter chart function right here. So what we need to do once we've got the chart up is we want to do two things. First of all, we want to change the first trade date, which is the natal date. And there's been a few that I have been playing around with, and one of them being the BTC natal chart based in Liverpool, and then the second one based in Liverpool again, however, different dates. So you'll see that date is changing. So 2009 and then 2008. Okay, I believe that this was the first trade date, and I believe that this was a conceptualized idea of Bitcoin. So I'm just going to use the BTC natal date in 2009, which is the Genesis block from my understanding. I'm going to click OK, and that's just basically going to reconfigure the ephemeris for this period here, or this whole chart, I should say. And then what we're going to get over here is we're going to see the chart, what we're looking at, and then underneath it, BTC USD natal. And basically anytime that you see on my charts where I've got the symbol, and then underneath it I've got the like the natal chart, that's what I'm referencing for the planetary stuff. So now what I want to do is I basically want to zoom in on this data, because we've got too much data. If I go in here and try to work with so much of this data, it's going to take a long time to generate. So this T-min, T-max time frame section. So T-min is, I guess, time frame minimum and time frame max. I'm just going to change this to say the last few months. Oh, here's my mouse. Take this back to January, and I'll give you out until September 23rd. Alrighty, now this time step is going to tell us basically how accurate the ephemeris is for calculating the planetary alignment. So, for example, if we have one day, that means it's just going to take a snapshot. For example, it could be at 12 noon or midnight. It's going to take a snapshot at the planets at that particular time and then give us our aspects. Or we can go all the way down to second. It's going to take a look at every single second and give us a snapshot of that particular second that we're looking at. I generally stick to the 1 hour time frame. This is only a couple of months. I should change this to 24. Okay. And to close this, it's going to now recalculate the ephemeris again, and we can see that we've got just this data here that we're looking at. Open up the McWhirter chart. We're going to open up a model, and for the model that we're using, it's going to be transits to the natal chart, because we want to see what planets we're transiting to the natal chart, which is why we put this natal date in here. We're going to click open. And what this is going to give us is the suggested forecast curve for the market. Now, I had shown this in my back end. I had alluded to potentially that the price is going to continue declining, and I had alluded to that mostly because of the fact that our suggested curves were topping out and now falling lower as well. So we could see that during this period here, we saw that the curve was pointing up, or the energy, the McWhirter energy was pointing up, and then the market at this point was bottoming out before it was rallying higher. And we saw that the whole energy was above this zero line here. You see this zero line, basically this black line here. The energy was above that zero line, and that means that there's positive planetary energy. And then the market, the energy declined, and then it rose again, and then it declined out into this period right here. Okay, sort of see that synchronicity. And then it rose up into this period right here. And then from that, we're basically being in a downward spiral. We might pump for a little bit. Basically, it's downward into September. So that's this, I guess, the suggested forecasted curve, and I've just provided you at that till September. I won't go any further than that. But basically, that's one of the reasons why I was alluding that there's going to be some possible negativity in. This is what I did in the back end. I'm sorry I haven't provided you any videos. Some negative energy or some declining asset prices for the Bitcoin market or cryptocurrency as a whole over this time period because of the energy levels were declining. Now, there's a few different ways we can calculate the energy levels. If we have a look at this cycle chart, we click this little button here. We got new moon or full moon, and then we got sun ingress in cardinal signs. At the moment, it is set on the new moon, and what I'm going to do is change it. Just expand that a bit. I'm going to change it from new moon or full moon and change it just to new moon. So what happens with new moon to full moon, let me explain it, is basically at every new moon or every full moon, it's going to then calculate the energy level based on the planets, okay? So is there more negative energy and is there more positive energy? If you're not too sure what I'm talking about, you might not be well versed in the planetary side of things just yet. But basically, if a planet makes a trine, that is considered a positive. And if a planet makes a square, that is considered a negative. And that basically means that any of these points around the zodiac, if a planet squares it, or any of these points around the zodiac, if the planet's a trine, then that's either positive or negative. So if you draw the zodiac and you see one planet here and you see another planet here, if we have our 0 point up here and we draw a square, we generally say that this is going to be squared out, okay? So it's going to be a negative aspect. I won't go into it now because that was just a crude example. So I'm just going to change this now from new moon or full moon just straight to new moon. Now this is going to be new moon to new moon. So basically every month or every 28 days or so, it's going to recalculate the energy level, and it's going to tell us which way the market's likely to go. Obviously, the new moon or full moon is going to give us more of the intraday, or the basically every 14 days it's going to shift direction and give us a trend. So it's going to be a little bit more accurate for the nitty-gritty stuff. However, the longer term full month cycle is going to give us an overall bias for that time period. Now, the one thing that nobody tells you on how this works, and one thing that I had figured out, was basically you have your starting point just like a cycle, and then you have your ending point just like a cycle, okay? So if, and there's just two things I need to point out. This bar here, this is 0 line, okay? So it's basically a 0 line, then you got positive 100, and then you got negative 100. This 0 line is basically saying that if the market is above the 0 line, we have a bullish bias, and if the energy level is above the 0 line, we have a bullish bias, and if it's below the 0 line, then we have a negative bias, which means that the market is likely to push lower more than it's likely to push higher. Okay, we have that bias. And then we've also got the start and the end of the cycle, and the way it works is you've got your cycle start, and then you got your cycle end. If we have positive energy, so we have positive energy here because it's above the 0 line, and we have the end of the cycle here. Generally what it means is that the cycle will end higher than where it began. And if we have negative energy, because it's under the 0 line, and then we have the end of the cycle here, generally what it will mean is that the cycle will end lower than where it began. In this case here, it'll end lower than where it began. So for this whole time period here, from basically here, it's basically topped out on an energy level perspective, all the way down to here, it should be, providing that this is going to be of any guide to us, it should be on a downward trajectory right now, okay? Right into these lows down here. Again, I've only provided you out till September, so it could go even lower than here, or it might push up. We'll have to see what happens after September. So in this whole period here, the market should be moving higher. And then we look for the smaller moves inside that, especially on, let me switch over, the new moon or full moon, which will give us those smaller cycles. And then we look for the longer term cycles or the shorter term cycles to give us a guide on the way down. So we see that the market was pushing up into the tops here on the new moon to full moon, and then pushing down from here. So I am of a bearish tendency right now. It doesn't mean that the market has to collapse down to these levels, right? It doesn't mean that. It just means that the market's going to be biased lower right now out into this period. And this is the McWhirter Theory, okay? If you want to learn about her stuff, you can buy her book. However, I've also done a full course on it. It's up to you which way you want to go. And if you want to simplify things, you can buy the software from Alfie if you'd like. It's relatively expensive, a couple $1,000, but it's going to basically give you this tool pre-built out. However, if you jump in the course, I've built you the tool that you can use, and we're always updating the tool as well. So this is one of the reasons why I am not bullish on the market, and everyone who keeps calling for a bottom is going to be disappointed, on and on and on. The other thing that I want to point out is the basically what we had, let me just change this, is we had this market storming down quite sharply here, and it came down into the 24th, okay? The 24th, so if I just highlight over this section right here, we see that this bar, and we're looking up here, this bar was the 24th, okay? A lot of people were suggesting that we're going to get a bottom around the 21st to the 22nd of June, and that was because they were looking at the equinox and solstice dates, and June being one of the most important quarters of the year, provided us with a potential bottom around this period, and then a lot of people were starting to look higher. I have done several videos on the equinox and solstice dates, and I do urge you to just take a look at one of the highlighted videos I have on my channel, because that's going to explain the 4 natural seasonal dates of the year. Generally, what can happen around these dates, and a lot of people look for the perfection, so they look for that 21 to 22. 24 is perfectly fine. If the market bottomed on the 24th, that's perfectly fine. Just always overlay the dates of bottoming with our solar dates, and you'll get them in the back end, or you can calculate them yourself. There is likely to be a little push higher from here, okay? What we see here is we have basically the start of the cycle and the end of the cycle pushing down. And then what we have here is we have this one down here, and then it pushes higher into the next cycle. So there is going to be a little chance that we're going to get a small move higher into this period before the market moves lower, and then it might move higher a bit and then move lower into this period here. That's sort of the trajectory I'm looking at over the next, and remember, new moon to full moon over the next 3 months, every 14-day period, okay? So just keep that in mind. I'm going to cut this off now. McWhirter update, how to use the software for the McWhirter Theory, and then also keep in mind to always track your solar dates, which are also our weather dates, or our time by solar degrees, because they will give you the directions. And I did like 3-hour mini program on how to use the solar dates, how to calculate them, and how to actually benefit from them. So if you haven't already done that, you really need to do it, because then it all starts to make sense, okay? All right, I'll talk to you soon.